somewhere out there in, well, La La Land. We'll be back in a few.
You can advertise your business on Night Dreams Talk Radio, and you will be heard worldwide. Why not contact us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com.
You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.
Well, we try to be, exciting anyway. I can't say we're the best, but we're certainly on the radio, and we're not absolutely the worst. Anyway, James, you had a question for Joe. Go ahead.
Yeah, Joe, I'm sure you've seen these depictions of Native American pottery from Central America or maybe even South America, where it depicts them living side by side with dinosaurs. Have you researched some of that?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those in the the museum there in Lima, and also in Ica, Peru. Again, they're not depicting those things by having seen some skeleton laying on the ground coming out a bit at a time. They had to be seeing living animals, and a lot of them are just like the Chinese dragons you see in Chinese art. And there are others that are just they appear to be known dinosaurs. Some we don't know what they are, what they're depicting. But there's a lot of that stuff down there. One of the best ones is, again, one that Vance Nelson has in his book. It's way up in the mountains in some remote place. You got to have a military guard to even go in there, apparently. I don't know why, but he went in there, and here on this overhang, up against the wall, a sandstone wall, there's a red ochre chalk drawing of clearly a long-necked dinosaur, sauropod type thing. And there's several stick figures around spearing it. And there's no mistaking what it is. You can't make it a snake, a lizard, a llama, or anything else. It's clearly a sauropod dinosaur that's supposed to have been extinct for 140 million years. And there it is. Well, they had to have seen that. That was some event in their past. They either killed this thing or killed a lot of them. and or fought it at least, and it's depicted on that wall there. Well, nobody's going to say that's more than a few thousand years ago. If it's a few thousand years ago, then dinosaurs didn't go extinct, and it's like the Bible says, they got off the ark and went all around the world and proliferated, and now you don't see them because the earth has gotten too dry and too cold. Peru right now, in those mountains up there, I really doubt that a dinosaur of any kind would stay there. It's just too dry. It's not humid enough. Not right there. So weather conditions is going to govern where these things end up being, and they're going to change with the weather. But, yeah, I think that stuff improves. There's surely some fakes. I know there's some fakes. In fact, I bought a couple on purpose. I wanted to have a genuine fake so I could study it against what were considered to be the real thing, because I've molded four of the Ica stones from Ica, Peru, with dinosaur and human depictions on there. Maybe they're all fake, but this one that I worked on, it was made out of a quartz cobble, which is real hard stuff. You don't scratch that stuff with a broken hacksaw blade. It was beautifully done, just like the andesite, which has a soft surface. And there it is. I don't see how if there were fakers making that stuff back in the 70s, 60s, or whatever, they wouldn't pick up a quartz cobble. It'd be foolish. You get something that's softer. So if only that one is real, then men live with dinosaurs in Peru. I don't see how you can escape it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've did a lot of research, too, and you kind of touched on something. The tropical regions seem to have most and all the reports, even this Titan boa. I'm sure you must have come across some reports on that. What's your thoughts on the Titan boa existing today?
Well, yeah. A couple of years ago, I wouldn't have thought much about it. But my friend up in Canada, John Worms, published a book. And in the back of it, he's basically talking about Bigfoot and other things. But in the back of it, or in part of it, he's talking about these the Native Americans up there in Canada talk about all these giant snakes they encounter. And they never go back to that fishing spot. This one lady said they came down the road, and here's this log that's like 2 feet across, laying across the road. You get out and go over to it and go, oh my gosh, it's not a log, it's a living animal, it's a snake.
Oh.
Yeah. Some of these things are huge. And that's in Canada. I go, well, how could they possibly live in Canada? Well, apparently they go in the water, you go down to underground caves, or go down and get into tunnels where the giant beaver still exists. That's a whole other thing. There's giant beaver up there still alive. The ones that are 5-6 feet tall.
Beaver, wait a minute, Joe.
Eat one of them and live all winter. I don't know.
Joe, but, you're talking about beaver 5-6 foot tall?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're black. They're Castorides. They're the one that's supposed to have been extinct for 10,000 years. John Worms has been in a lot of trouble to go way up there in Canada talking to the Native Americans up there. And again, there's no reason these guys to make up a story. They say, yeah, usually those big ones tear up our traps so they get away. Occasionally they'll get a trap that's big enough to catch them, and they skin them. They said we have to cut the hide into 4 parts because it's so big. And they're black.
Wow. Are they aggressive? Has there been any, reports of those giant beaver being aggressive towards humans?
No, but there's an old Indian, there's a piece of pottery or a plate maybe from, I think it's Arizona. Herb Stein came across that in a museum somewhere, and it shows a man fighting a giant beaver 5 or 6 feet tall. It's clear what he is. Out in Utah, or Arizona, what? How would he know about that? Was he from back in Indiana or Canada? Or were they out there 1,000 years ago? I don't know. It's a strange thing, but that's clearly what he was depicting. John, who's a very astute man, extremely credible, he said he was on the river up there in Canada. He said, I saw one. I saw one alive. And he said they just disappear into the river and you never see them again. But he found out when you look down in the river when it's clear, out in the middle of the river, these things start digging a tunnel, and they dig back. He said as far as a mile underground, under the shoreline, up into farmland. And they have a big tail. Apparently, when they're going through there, they're digging this mud out. Then they pat their tail in a circular fashion, and it makes the cave smooth. And I guess air finally kind of dries it out, the clay, so they've got a kind of a semi-permanent tube in there. Well, he said there are farmers up there. I believe he talked to one of them. So the guy's plowing along in probably a small tractor. And all of a sudden, one of the wheels, which is closer to the river area, which is a mile away from the river, all of a sudden it boom, falls into a big old hole. And get out and look, and here's this tunnel, this round tunnel. And she's like, well, what the heck is that doing there? So they come back the next day, it's repaired.
Ooh.
And they didn't do it.
Oh, my goodness.
See, that proves there's a lot of cryptids out there, that exist that, a lot of people say, they don't exist. Now, I got to ask you two questions. When you've been out looking for dinosaurs, have you found any prehistoric human remains or any parts of humans, buried with the dinosaur bones or with the camel bones or what have you?
Well, I've been to a grave site down around Post, Texas, way out of the boondocks, up on the edge of the escarpment up there, where they dug out a man 12 feet tall back in 1955. There was a professor from Texas Tech University, or college then, went there with this high school cowboy who found the bones and brought Texas Tech over there. They excavated the skeleton of a man 12 feet tall. And he was in the museum display over there in the old museum at Texas Tech. I'm pretty sure I saw that when I was in junior high. And about 1960, from what I've heard, someone vandalized the case and destroyed the bones, took the bones, we don't know what, but it's not on display now. And I doubt if they would display them if they had them. So why would anybody do that? I don't know, but that's what happened to them. I found a cranium one time down in the deep buffalo beds, which in parts of the canyon are right on top of the mastodon beds and the giant camel beds. But this was in a reworked coarse sand, black sand, and I noticed something in the creek bed that looked like a circle. It was about an eighth of an inch around. It was a perfect circle. I go, wow, an ostrich egg. This is the greatest thing ever. So I started excavating around it very carefully, and down about halfway down, there's a bump on the bottom of it. But what in the world? Oh my gosh, it's someone's skull. So I carefully took it out. It was just the top half of the skull. The rest of it eroded away. I carefully took it out and prepped it out. Took it to a famous paleontologist or a forensologist over in Texas Tech University. He's now deceased. And he says, yeah, it's like you say, it's probably a young female with an elongated head, not like Peru necessarily, but we couldn't tell about the sex really because the brow was missing, which would generally tell you male or female. The occipital bone was just, what do they call the bump back there on the back of an Indian skull, typical North American Indian? That was missing, but the ear bone was there, and the whole top of the skull. But the sutures between all the both parietals on the top were so separated they barely touched. I've never seen anything like it. Even in a baby skull, they're more fused than that. So I just thought, well, it's just because it's so old and root etched, which may be the case. The roots just eat on it for so long, it thins the bone down. But I got to thinking about it one day. I wonder if that's a giant child. a giant baby. That's why the sutures are so open.